How's it going, everybody? My name is Cam White, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for June 8th through June 14th of 2020? Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you. This week, we actually really don't have a lot going on, which might sound kind of surprising given what the past couple weeks have looked like. This week, astrologically, we don't even have, I'm not doing highlights anymore, but if I were to do highlights, the only thing we've got going on this week is Mars conjoining Neptune, which as it starts to apply to Neptune, as Mars starts to apply to Neptune, it's just going to be building up and building up. It's already really, present right now. I'm sure you've already kind of felt the Mars conjoining Neptune thing going on, but that's really the biggest thing that's going on this week. So before we begin, the one thing I want to kind of hit on with this week is use this time to take a quick break. 2020 has been an insane year and there's a lot going on. And so it's going to be important to take what time you can away from, whether it's, seeing what's going on in the world, what problems you have, taking a moment to go hey, what do I need to do in order to handle this better? How can I handle this better? How can I go through this, in an inspiring, in a, progressive way? The idea that I'm trying to get across here is if we're going to be going through all of this stuff, especially this week, since there's not a whole lot going on, make something of it, change something, learn something new, change something about yourself. Like I talked about last week, I did quit nicotine. I'm on day, I think 26 now. I'm actually going to make a video about that. However, that inspired me I'm actually quitting weed today. So I'm not going to smoke weed for the next little while, maybe the next month or two. So, I'm just trying to use this as a time to do something different. Clean up, clear out. We just had the eclipses they had eclipse on the south node. So it's a good time to release stuff as well. But anyway, you guys probably don't want to hear me talk about my life. So let's go ahead and go into the horoscope. Starting this week on Monday, we are going to be having the moon in Capricorn make a conjunction to Jupiter. And so as the moon's in Capricorn, like we all know, it's usually a little bit more serious. We're not so emotionally involved. We can kind of, check out and just do the work that we need to. While the moon conjoins Jupiter, though, this can feel like, you're trying to maximize that output, doing everything that you can to get what idea or what plan you have across. It's trying to you can just be overworking yourself, getting just a little bit too overwhelmed with your work as well, or what you want to do or how you are doing things. Jupiter doesn't really like being in Capricorn. It doesn't work well there. So you might have a plan or a system or a structure, and it might be, it might not work that well. So as we go into Monday with the moon conjoining Jupiter, look at, how you can expand your foundation, the way that you structure yourself. This is a Monday. We're starting the week off. So this is kind of a good time to look at hey, what is my plan? How am I structuring myself? And am I putting too much? Am I trying to put on too much of my plan into my system, into my routines or anything like that? And as the moon conjoins Jupiter, it's there can be a lot of this expansion of stuff that you just don't have the time to deal with, or you just don't have the energy to deal with. So it's going to be really important to know what you can handle, what work you can put on yourself, and where you can delegate other work. But as we go through Monday, the moon will conjoin Jupiter, then it's going to make, or it'll conjoin Jupiter, then it'll move into Aquarius and make a conjunction with Saturn. So, I'm going to be pulling up the chart with this one. With this week, there's not a whole lot to really look at with the chart, but I did want to notice that, the moon's going to be here. Once it leaves Capricorn and moves into Aquarius, getting smacked with Saturn is kind of a lot. It's going from Jupiter and Capricorn to Saturn and Aquarius is kind of a transition, because Jupiter and Capricorn's kind of trying its best to kind of remain optimistic and faithful and kind of more serious, more realistic ways, while Saturn and Aquarius is if it's going to be realistic, it's got to be your own device. It's got to be something that works for everybody. It's got to be something that, works for this way and that way. It's, it's a complicated system. And so as the moon moves from Capricorn to Aquarius and hits Saturn, it's kind of hey, all right, if this is all the stuff that you're trying to get done, if this is what you're trying to fulfill, how are you going to make a plan? How are you going to create that system? And this is Saturn and Aquarius. This isn't about, Saturn and Capricorn, where it's just about getting stuff done. This is Aquarius. How can we do something different? How can we get together, use the collective mindset, or work with teams or groups of people to have a better structure, to have a better foundation, to be more disciplined, whatever that looks like. So I think on Monday, as the moon conjoins Jupiter, it's going to be kind of overwhelming, all of the stuff that we want to do. But as the moon moves into Aquarius, conjoins Saturn, there is this sense of like, all right, we can do this. We're just going to have to get a little bit creative and ask for help to be able to accomplish all of that stuff. However, as we get into Tuesday, that's when we're going to be having the moon make a trine to Venus and also square Uranus at the same time, which, that can be a little frustrating depending on, who you are and what you're doing. As we look at it, we're going to have the moon make that trine to Venus, still retrograde, and it's going to be squaring Uranus. So with the moon in Aquarius, it's like we want to see things different. We're feeling things differently. We can feel like we have to isolate ourselves or alienate ourselves, outcast ourselves from a group of people to kind of like get our own opinions on things, to get our own idea of things. It's kind of feeling like you're on your own. But as the moon's making that trine to Venus, there's this sense of, wanting to connect ourselves to something different. Venus is that value. What's worth what to us? And with it retrograde in Gemini, it's like, well, this isn't as satisfying and I'm looking for something that's more satisfying. The moon in Aquarius is doing something different, go out of your comfort zone, do something that you think that you might like, but you've never done before and go try it. You're probably going to love it. This moon in Aquarius trining Venus is like the time to kind of like, I guess, expand your taste, your palate. This is a good time to like, just look around, do something different, experience something different. With Venus and Gemini, there's a lot of, with everything in Gemini, there's a lot of noise. And so the moon in Aquarius is kind of like taking a step back. Like if you've been at a concert or a festival, sometimes all of the music constantly can get overwhelming. So a lot of people take a step back, go back to the campsite. That's kind of like the moon in Aquarius transit here on Tuesday. But as it squares Uranus, there's this, like it's kind of nerve-wracking and it can make you feel insecure when you don't have that stability or that solid like tangibility of the thing that you want. Like it's still an idea. You're still searching for it. You're still understanding it. And with Uranus and Taurus, the way that we're trying to create value, create stability, have a foundation, a tangible thing, Uranus is helping us be more creative with it. But Uranus is also saying that tangibility factor is unpredictable and you can't rely on that. So the moon in Aquarius is kind of asking you, like, if you're wanting to attract yourself to the things that you like a little bit better, how can you get creative with it? How can you do it differently? Like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this, but like when people talk about like manifesting and stuff like that, you don't talk about like, oh, like if you want to manifest a new car, like X, Y, and Z, like what you do is you understand the essence of what that car is going to bring to you. So it's like, if you want a new car, what is it going to feel like when you own that car? What is it going to feel like when you drive the car? What is it going to feel like, and you bring the essence, you bring the feelings to yourself. And that's kind of like how you manifest it. This on Tuesday with the moon trining Venus and squaring Uranus, it's kind of like we might have to bring on the essence of things and the feeling of things before we actually see the tangible result of it. So I think it's going to be important on Tuesday to just be open-minded, be a little bit more serious, but also, don't get too frustrated when things aren't happening the way that you want them to. I think on Tuesday, Mars is still really close to Neptune this whole week. So it could be a little bit frustrating when things aren't looking the way that you want them to, but this is about, keep moving forward, not necessarily going, I don't like it's, like a painter doesn't start their paint or their whatever they're painting and go, this fucking sucks, I'm going to stop. They just paint over it or paint something different or go along with it. Like finish what you started, keep going down your path. Just you're going to get frustrated on the way. Just don't let it get to you or don't let it stop you from moving forward. So as we move forward into Wednesday, nothing's happening. Yes, literally nothing's happening. Let me show you the chart for it actually. Come on, computer, work with me. There we go. So if we actually look at the chart, go on a Wednesday, literally nothing's happening. Like the moon, if you count a trine to the sun, I don't really think that's anything. It's just kind of like, okay, sun's in Gemini, moon's in Aquarius, a lot of air energy. But besides that, like, what else is really going on here? Not a whole lot. So I think Wednesday, while the moon's in Aquarius, still just a good day to detach, do your own thing. Working with people is also going to be, a good thing to do. I think while the moon's in Aquarius, though, it's like, how can we be supportive? How can we have structure? How can we have discipline, maturity through that Aquarius lens with working with other people, working in teams, working in, I think it's funny with Saturn going in Aquarius, just how much of a collective like anger there almost is with Saturn and Aquarius having to deal so much with, bigger groups of people, society. The moon here not really doing anything. It's kind of like, do your thing with people. Don't feel isolated or alienated. It can feel easy to do that when you're not with everybody or the team of people that you want to be with. But I think as we go through Wednesday, on a more of a personal level, I think this is going to be a good day to just reflect. A lot of air energy with a little dash of water. We got Mars and Mercury in water signs, and the Sun, Venus, Saturn, the Moon, all in air signs. So there's a lot of thinking, a lot of feeling. So that can mean a lot of reflecting. So I think as we go through Wednesday, don't overthink stuff. Don't, outcast or beat yourself up. This is just going to be a day to kind of like really get a clear idea of how things are going to work for you. Because as we move forward into Thursday, I think this is when things are going to be a little bit different. The moon's going to be going into Pisces, and it's going to be making a square to Venus as it enters Pisces. And so why I say it like this is because, So as the moon goes into Pisces, it's not necessarily the most clear of times, nor is it the most tangible of times. It's very, again, like, how are we feeling about this? What does this mean for you? What is your experience of this? What is the environment like? And so as the moon moves into Pisces, and what else is going on? That's it. Moon's moving into Pisces, basically. Yeah, it's going to be making a square to Venus. So there's this sense of like the environment that we're in, what we're reflecting on, how we're feeling, that connection just still isn't there. Venus is still not making that connection, and the moon is kind of getting agitated because it's like, okay, well, why isn't this connecting? Why am I not bringing in this value that I want, or the thing that I value? Why is it not coming to me, or why am I not getting it? I think as the moon's in Pisces, this is going to be kind of a time to really reflect. Like, I mean, let's look to the ruler of Pisces, Jupiter. Jupiter's in Capricorn right now. So this is kind of like about going like, hey, the system or the structure that we believe, all of this Pisces stuff that we feel, that we reflect, it may be a little corrupt and corroded. And so I think this might be a good time to really look at like, hey, when I'm reflecting, when I'm feeling, when I'm kind of going with the motions of stuff, how do I do that? What's my layout? How does my brain program that system? And I think as the moon goes through Pisces, this is going to be a good time to really look at like, I don't know how to explain it. If you've been on my channel for a while, I do not like moon and Pisces transits. Because they're frustrating. It's like, you don't like, you're feeling this way. Things can kind of go that way. You don't really know. There's like a lot of nostalgia there too. There's this essence. It's a lot of stillness. And I don't really like being still. I'm really impatient. And as it's squaring Venus, there's this sense of like, how can you be still when you're like sitting in an uncomfortable chair? Like, it's kind of uncomfortable, and you're going to want to change your body position to this way or that way to make sure you're in the most comfortable position. And on Thursday, we may not get that comfortable position. I think this is just going to be more of a time to really go like, hey, what's my experience of this? Like when I talked about the last 2 days or the last couple of days with Moon and Aquarius, it's like, what's our plan? How is this all working? How am I getting there? How are we connecting all the dots? The Moon in Pisces is kind of like, well, plans don't always work. Like, plans really don't. We all try to make plans and they don't fucking work. Moon in Pisces, like, you kind of have to wing it. You kind of have to figure it out for yourself there. So that might be a little bit frustrating, but I think it's a good day to really ask the deeper questions of, what do I want? What does that even look like? And it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Just simplify it. I think that's the great thing about the moon in Pisces is that it really is simple. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It can be really easy if you make it easy for yourself. Now, as we go into Friday, we do have we have quite a few things going on Friday. Moon's going to conjoin Neptune and Mars at the same time. And then Mars is going to conjoin Neptune later on in the day. And at some point a little bit earlier in the day, I know this is kind of a weird mixture, but the moon will be making a trine to Mercury. So let's go ahead and pull up the chart for that. When we have this Moon, Mars, Neptune conjunction, expect to be confused, expect to not know where you're going, expect Mars is the energizer, right? Mars heats things up, severs, cuts. Like Mars is kind of like wanting to get a job done. And as it's conjoining Neptune, it's kind of like getting the wrong instructions, not having a clear plan on what to do, or being really influenced by your environment or what you are perceiving. As the moon's conjoining Mars and Neptune, this is just emotionally ramping all of this up. So it's going to feel really intense. Like I would look to where Neptune like rules in your chart and go like, okay, or not where Neptune rules, where Pisces is at in your chart, and ask yourself the question like, okay, what is causing me issues here? What am I not seeing? And how can I be a little bit more clear about that? But as the moon's conjoining Neptune and Mars, it is going to feel very frustrating, especially when you can't see the answers. And so Mars conjoining Neptune is kind of like, all right, I'm done being fooled. I'm done being, I'm ready to be disillusioned. I'm ready to like see things clearly, or at least just take the leap of faith that's needed when you don't have things that are super clear, or when you don't like really have a plan for things. Like, what is it going to take that leap of faith? When we have the moon conjoining Mars and Neptune, that's kind of like that passage of like, all right, this is how I feel right now, and this is the action I'm going to take. My only thing is that, with Mars conjoining Neptune, you're probably going to take some action, but just know it may not be the clearest action. You may not have all the answers you're really looking for when you need to take action. And that's okay. We don't always get everything that we want or that we need at all the time, but just be forewarned, if you're going to be taking action, if you're going to be doing something on Friday, just know that it may not be, the results may not be clear. What you're doing may not be clear. Your intention, your why may not be clear. So I think this is going to be a better time to not necessarily go like, this is what I'm going to do, this is my intent, and this is how I'm going to do it. This is more of a day to be open and receptive to what you can do. And don't be afraid to be creative and go with the flow of things. Like, this is all Pisces, Gemini stuff. Just like go with the flow, and there won't be so much mental exhaustion that's stopping you. Now, the other thing I did want to mention, though, is that when we do go to Friday, we are going to be having the moon make that trine to Mercury before it makes the conjunction to Mars and Neptune, which this sounds pretty peaceful. I don't want to say pretty peaceful. I think this is a good time to really reflect on what needs to be reflected on. Mercury's in Cancer, like what needs to be said, what needs to be addressed, what needs to be thought about. Like, Mercury is the planet of our thoughts, our the way that we speak, the way that we say things, our ideas. And as this is in Cancer, this is kind of focusing on the necessity, what's important, what do we need to protect, what do we need to defend. And the moon's in Pisces, being reflective, kind of seeing things, in this holistic perspective. And as the moon's offering a trine to Mercury, I think this is going to give us a realization of like, yeah, this is what I need. Yeah, this is what I want. Yeah, this is of necessity. The only thing, though, is that when we get there, Mercury is in shadow. So whatever we're thinking about, whatever we're, saying that we need, all of this is going to come up during this Mercury retrograde. So, while all, things can be moving really fast, we're all getting ready to change a lot of stuff. I just really want to emphasize this moon, all of this Mars Neptune stuff with the moon, while it's making that trine to Mercury, and Mercury is like in shadow. There's a lot of, feelings involved with our actions that may not be, really thought through before they're taken. So it's just important to, like, on Friday, really sit with yourself. Don't be antsy or anxious about stuff. Take stuff one thing at a time. Go with the flow of things, reflect on what you need, and, take one step at a time. That's my biggest advice. It's going to just feel very confusing. It's going to feel very blurry. And also, a lot of mental exhaustion. Like, look at all of the stuff that we have in Gemini. It's really loud. There's a lot of white noise that can be deafening. And it can really block out some of the more specific tones that you need to be listening to. And so I just think on Friday, take your time with stuff, especially just all of this. We're living in really confusing times. We're living in very emotionally charged times too. And it's just important to I think while it's important to feel all of these feelings right now, just especially with the current state of the world, I think it's important to express, to feel this, to understand this, especially on a subjective and an objective point of view. But it's just as important to understand that, like, you know, if you're training for a marathon, you've got to run all the time, right? But that means that you're going to be sleeping more. You're going to be, you know, changing your diet a little bit more. When you've got all of this energy going on where, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, no one knows what the hell's going on with it. You know, it's this story here, it's this story there. Everyone's already confused about it. We have these protests that are really dividing people. There's just so much. And it's like important to understand with all of this going on that, like, you can't just do what you've been doing the whole time and like expecting the same result. Like, if you're going to be charged up about all of this stuff, if you're going to really, you know, get involved with all this stuff, you have to understand that, like, you need to take care of yourself in different ways. You need to make sure that you're not as tense, that you have, you know, if you're going to be along with everyone, getting, you know, especially with the protests, a lot of, you know, especially if you guys are like protesting and stuff right now, if you're getting really involved with this, because I know this is a really like emotionally charged, you know, topic to talk about, especially here in America. It's like, do that, go and protest, do your thing, but make sure you're getting the rest that you need. Make sure you're turning your brain off when you need to turn your brain off, because this is exhausting times. And the one thing you don't want to do during this is go through all of this stressed out and anxious to where by the time we get to July next month, which I'm actually making monthly horoscopes, but by the time we get to July, we're going to be really fucking tired and we still have more work to do. So it's just important. Like I said, if you're running a marathon, you need to be eating different, sleeping different, resting different, like actually doing more things that are going to help you rather than just doing the same thing. Like, you can't train for a marathon and go and party every single weekend, stay out late and get like a little bit of sleep. Like, it's not going to work. So during this time, do something a little bit different. If you're going to be putting more energy here, make sure you're also resting a little bit more or doing X, Y, and Z. You guys get what I'm trying to say. What day are we on? We're on Friday still. Okay, Saturday. Saturday, we do have the moon move into Aries, making a sextile to Saturn and Venus. I'm actually kind of excited for Saturday simply because this doesn't look awful. As the moon, I mean, here, let me move it like an hour. So as we have the moon move into Aries, it makes that nice little sextile to Saturn, and then it's eventually going to start applying to Venus. When we have the moon in Aries, when we're talking about our body, how we feel, what we're reflecting on, and this is in Aries, we're charged up. What do we do? How do we, you know, what do we want to put out? What do we want to like apply? What do we want to, you know, be direct with? And as it's sextiling Saturn, there's this, God, like Saturday's just looking real good to have like a conversation, or if like you've been very passionate about something, a good time to put it out there. I think just with the current state of the world, I think Saturday will be interesting, more constructive than destructive. But as the moon goes into Aries, I guess on a personal level, ask yourself, you know, what do you want to do? What are you emotionally charged up to do? Mars is in Pisces right now, so, you know, it's going to be fluid. You're not going to feel energized all day long every single day. But as the moon does go into Aries and you are feeling at least energetically charged up, then take some action with it. The moon's going to be sextiling Saturn. So Saturn's going like, hey, you know, when you work with people, when you know, take collective advice, and when you are able to distinguish what works that other people do and what doesn't work that other people do, and you do your own thing from there, you can get a lot of positive and constructive results. And then the moon is going to move from that conjunction to or that sextile to Saturn, and then give it to Venus retrograde here in Gemini. And I think this is just kind of like, you know, understanding again what works, what doesn't work. The moon sextiling Saturn is kind of like taking advice of like what everyone else is doing, and then as it sextiles Venus, it's like, well, that may not be, it may work, but you may not actually enjoy it. You may not actually want it. So I think as we go into Saturday, I think it's just going to be important to be kind of like not headstrong, even though the moon's going to be in Aries, it might be a little bit more difficult. This is going to be more of a time of like deciphering, you know, when it comes to the collective mindset of Saturn and Aquarius, like it can feel very divided. It can feel like this is wrong, this is right. Try not to act too binary with it. Try to be more open and take and use what you have or what works for you, what you want to use, and take that with you. And don't take the stuff that doesn't work. Don't take the stuff that you don't want to deal with. But as the moon does leave that sextile to Saturn and then starts making a sextile to Venus, there's this deciphering. There's this, juggling of like, hey, this does kind of, I do like this, and this does kind of work in this way. It's kind of like a good word for it is like fiddling. You're just fiddling and playing around with how you feel, what you want, how you want to do it. I know that sounds kind of weird, just especially with the times that we're in, but let's break this down in a bigger way. We still have Venus retrograde. Mercury's about to retrograde, and well, basically, when Mercury does retrograde, Venus will still be retrograde. We'll have Mercury, Saturn's retrograde, Jupiter's retrograde. Basically, Uranus is not yet. Neptune is not yet. Pluto's retrograde. Basically, everything's retrograde. Nothing at this moment is meant for you to, anchor down and go like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm setting off on this, goal or whatever. This is the time to really play with ideas, to play with how you feel, to change things up. This isn't forever. But as we move forward throughout the rest of the year, when things do start moving forward, that's going to be the time to implement them. So if you're feeling like I don't know what's going on, I don't know what to do at this moment, like fiddle around. This is Venus and Gemini. Play with stuff. Play till you get bored with it. Just figure it out. Just play to see what's going to work best for you. And don't feel, like the whole fucking world's on pause at the moment. So take your time figuring out what you want, what's going to work for you. Take your time seeing what else that you can enjoy. It's kind of a long road, but I think that there's a lot of positive things to really get out of this time. This is a very rough time, but I think there's also there's just a lot of positive to get out of this if you're willing to do the work. Now, as we end this week, we go into Sunday. The only thing that we've really got going on is that moon making that square to Mercury, which I think that's actually going to be kind of really frustrating because while Mercury's in Cancer, this is what needs to be said. How can we be more tender with how we say things? Do we need to say this? Is this thought necessary? And the moon kind of yeah, I don't really care. I'm going to say it anyway. That's great. If you want to say it and go for it, just know what you're getting yourself involved with. The moon's going to be in Aries, and the way that we feel isn't going to be in alignment with how we're thinking. So it's kind of we may feel a certain way, we may want to do this, but logically it's not the best idea. So it's really up to you to go hey, should I do this or should I not do this? And I think as the moon's in Aries, wanting to charge things up, we just got done. If I use the analogy I talked about on Saturday, we play with what we're doing, we fiddle around with it. The moon in Aries is going yes, this is what I'm going to do. Yes, that's so moon in Aries. It then makes that square to Mercury where it's but do you need that? Venus and Gemini is all about having, fun, being, stimulated, all of that good stuff. But is that what it needs? This time with Mercury in Cancer, it is reflecting on do I need this? Is this of necessity, or can I let this go? And as the moon makes that square to Mercury, there's some frustration there. There is some tension. We want to be able to do anything and everything. It's just how we're programmed. But as the moon makes that square to Mercury, do we need to do that? Is that an action or a feeling that is necessary? And if it's not, what else can we do with it? And if it is necessary, then take the action. Do the damn thing. Don't be afraid to, assert that. Just know what is going to work, what is a necessity and what's not, because that distinction is just going to be really important on Sunday. And that's this week for you guys. That's really this week. If we go into next week, we are going to be having Mercury station retrograde. And next week, we will also be having the solar eclipse in Cancer as the sun goes into Cancer on the solstice. Next week is way more wild. Next week is way more crazy. This is more of the week where you want to play around with stuff. Take a breather. Think, reflect, as we get into next week with Mercury retrograding. Yes, Mercury retrogrades are time to reflect, rethink, review, but everything's fucking retrograde right now. So it's not about, only letting Mercury retrograde be the time to do that. I think with Mercury retrograding is going to be more of the time to go like, now that I understand what I need, now that I understand what is of necessity, now it's time to prioritize that and start getting the priorities more in line. And I think that solar eclipse in Cancer is really going to highlight that, because we're finally closing out this chapter. And this was a big chapter in, our lives and history. There's a lot that I think is going to be going down. But I think next week's more of the time where we actually start taking more of the more necessary steps forward, versus this week is more of still game planning. You don't. It's kind of like, I like to think of this week, a good way to look at it this week is like, if you ever got in an argument with someone and you just like did not have a good comeback, and then you're in like the shower the next day, you're like, I could have said this, I had this good comeback, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this week is like the week that you're in the shower where you start really thinking about stuff, and saying, oh, this is what I could have said, this is what I could have done. Why couldn't I have done this? This isn't a week to go like, I should have done this, but it's just more of like reflecting on it and then being able to use what you've learned on that reflection into the future. And as we move into the future, into next week, that's when, we might have that opportunity to call someone out again, where we might have that opportunity to say those shower thoughts, and actually just start taking action on them. And I think that's what I got for you guys. This week is pretty boring for the most part, but I think it's a good opportunity to just kind of sit with yourself, reflect a little bit, go with the motions. And so I guess with that being said, I think I'm going to head out of here. So thank you guys so much again for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.